Shang-Chi is the serious, dramatic story of family conflict between a father and his wayward son, exploring issues of legacy, heritage, and the desire to make your own future for yourself. It's also the tragic tale of a deeply flawed man who tried and failed to put his dark past behind him and is now willing to sacrifice everything to reunite with the woman he loves. It's also a story about a marginalised young woman breaking with tradition to forge a new life for herself and realise her true potential. It's also a modern action thriller about international criminal gangs, secret terrorist organisations, and underground fighting tournaments, stretching from the streets of San Francisco to the neon-soaked metropolis of Macau. It's also a magical fantasy movie about ancient warrior clans, immortal warlords, alternate dimensions, monsters, dragons, Chinese mythology, and sentient bamboo forests. It's also a comedy road trip movie about two young lovers leaving behind their humdrum existence to go on an exciting adventure to a far-off land, where they reconnect with their heritage, learn more about each other, and ultimately find a new sense of direction. The only thing it lacks is any sense of how to mesh all these different elements together into a coherent story. The end result is a frustrating mess of a film that swings wildly between serious drama and pathos, goofy attempts at observational comedy, fast-paced kung fu action scenes, and insane over-the-top CGI battles against ancient monsters. There's an awful lot of contradictory elements all vying for screen time and attention, ultimately undermining instead of supporting each other. But to properly explain the problems with this film, I need to give some kind of rundown of the plot. So clench your rings tight, because like with Tatiana after a couple of lines of cocaine, I'm going in hard and fast on this one. The movie begins in ancient China with a warlord who's out to conquer the world, because I guess that's what warlords do. He goes by many names, but for the sake of this review, let's call him Not Fu Manchu, because he's absolutely not based on that comic book character at all. Anyway, Not Fu Manchu is armed with 10 magical rings that grant him special powers, immortality, and kung fu moves straight out of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Where exactly did these magical rings come from, and how did he acquire them? Don't know. Even the script is like, I don't fucking know, mate. Just accept it and move on. So after amassing an army, he becomes a kind of puppet master working in the shadows, using his forces to stage assassinations, terrorist attacks, kidnappings, extortions, and all kinds of wholesome activities. And all I kept thinking at the time was, Jesus, how many secret organisations manipulating events behind the scenes do we actually need to have in this universe? We've got Hydra, the Black Widows, the Winter Soldier, and now the 10 fucking rings. I mean, were any of these groups even aware of each other? Did they come into conflict? Were they locked in some endless competition to one-up each other and become the ultimate stereotypical secret organisation? Who knows? That's the advantage of constantly retconning your own universe to introduce more and more characters and factions that no one's ever heard of until now. You really don't have to care how they all fit together. Anyway, by the mid-1990s, Not Fu Manchu gets wind of a secret magical bullshit land hidden behind a magical bullshit gateway that can only be accessed through a magical bullshit bamboo forest, and he decides that he wants a piece of that action. But then he runs smack bang into strong female character number 1, who totally kicks his ass despite his thousands of years of combat experience and being armed with the 10 magical bullshit rings. Because, you know, of course she does. But then for some reason she falls in love with them and they move back to the real world and have a couple of kids together. But then tragically it all goes wrong and she dies and the kids are left to be raised by Not Fu Manchu. Flash forward to the present day, and our man Shang-Chi is working as a valet attendant in modern-day San Francisco, which is depicted as a clean, picturesque, and efficiently managed city. Anyway, he's kind of an aimless drifter who spends most of his time hanging with his girlfriend, and believe me, we'll talk more about her later, but for the time being, let's call her Not Funny Katie. So Shang-Chi and Not Funny Katie are riding the bus one day when they get attacked by a bunch of thugs, including this fucking idiot with a sword for an arm. Seriously, would a robotic arm with an actual hand not be a bit more practical, both for combat and, well, daily life? Like, how the fuck is this dude supposed to blend in? Anyway, the fight forces Shang to transform into a kung fu master and totally kick their asses, but not before losing the green pendant given to him by strong female character number 1. Knowing that the other pendant is held by his sister, Shang travels to China to warn her about it. Because I guess valet attendants make so much money that they can just drop thousands of dollars on plane tickets and fly straight to China without having to worry about entry visas, travel documentation, customs officials, officials, the CCP, or the possibility that the Ten Rings would almost certainly be monitoring international arrivals. And for some reason, Not Funny Katie goes along with him. Seriously, you've got no weapons, no training, no contacts, no relevant experience, and you can't even speak Chinese. What possible use do you think you could be in a situation like this? But what the hell, I guess she needs to be there. Because otherwise, who would make us not laugh if Not Funny Katie wasn't there? So they quickly managed to track down his sister, who we'll now call Strong Female Character Number 2. Strong Female Character Number 2 runs an underground fighting tournament, which for some reason takes place in a skyscraper that's under construction. Because I guess active construction sites like that don't have security, night watchmen, video surveillance, or any means of keeping the general public off their property. I love how his sister's very first action is to fight Shang in a cage match in front of hundreds of people after announcing both of their real names to the crowds. Wow, sure hope there's no operatives from the Ten Rings amongst them, because that would almost immediately give you away and compromise the entire operation that you've been building since you were 16. Seriously, if your long lost brother suddenly reappears on your doorstep after 10 years, don't you think he might have a valid reason for being there? Don't you think it might be wise to hustle him off into a secure area where you can question him at leisure? Don't you think he might have had some justifiable reason for not returning all those years ago? And maybe, just maybe, you should give the man a chance to explain himself? Don't you think it would be better to not act like a fucking idiotic child just for the sake of delivering a momentary humiliation? Nah, it'll be fine. It really pisses me off when movies try hard to build up characters as smart, resourceful and cunning strategists, but then everything that they actually do in the story contradicts it. It's like telling me one thing but showing me something completely different, and I just can't reconcile this immature moron with the sinister, calculating crime lord the movie wants to paint her as. But nah, Strong Female Character Number 2 has to prove how strong and female she is by giving Shang a good old kick in the balls. I wonder what the reaction would be if the genders were reversed here. At one point, the movie even tries to claim that she was banned from training with the rest of the boys as a child, so she basically taught herself kung fu and became better than all of them. Fuck off, film. This is the Rey Skywalker School of Character Development, where girls are secretly better than boys at everything, and it's just that pesky patriarchy holding them back. Anyway, wouldn't you know it, this was all just a setup so that not Fu Manchu could get both of his kids together, then roll in and capture them. Which works great for the movie because it allows the first hour of the plot to happen, but makes absolutely no sense in reality. Surely you must understand that the two of them are stronger together than apart, and the more time you give Shang to explain his situation, the more chance they're gonna team up and fight you. You could have just snuck into their homes and captured them in their sleep, or waited until they were passed out drunk, or laced their food with sedatives. In fact, why the fuck does he even need them at all? All that not Fu Manchu really wants is their pendants, which he puts into a statue to produce a magic bullshit waterfall map to show the way through the magical bullshit forest to get into the magical bullshit fairy tale land. Which, to be honest, I have a lot of questions about anyway. Like, how exactly does that map, which he only sees for a few seconds, translate into actual speed and directional headings on the grounds? Clearly, it's not the sort of thing you can take with you and use on the move. I mean, did he record it on video? Did he memorize it? How is this supposed to work? I mean, back in the 90s, he made his way through the forest without it, so now you've got me wondering why it's even needed in the first place. If he doesn't really need the waterfall map, then he doesn't need the pendants to activate it, and he certainly doesn't need Shang and Strong Female Character Number 2, so basically the whole first half of this movie is a complete waste of time. And that's not even mentioning Not Funny Katie, who for some reason is still alive and still in this movie. I cannot begin to express how much these two facts displease me. Anyway, the upshot of all of this is that Not Fu Manchu wants to go back to the magical bullshit fairy tale land where he believes that his dead wife is being held prisoner behind a big door and kill anyone who stands in his way because he heard a voice in his head. Well, seems legit to me. Shang and the others are unwilling to help him, so he has them imprisoned. And by imprisoned, I mean put in a different part of his fortress where they're left completely unmonitored and seem to have free reign to move around wherever they want.
You serious?
This is some Dr. Evil level of prisoner management right here. What kind of child wrote this shit? Things are looking bad for our gang, but wouldn't you know it, they run into the Mandarin from Iron Man 3, because I guess Ben Kingsley wasn't done humiliating himself enough already. Fucking hell, mate, I hope those blood-soaked Disney dollars were worth it. The movie really takes its time to have a laugh at his portrayal of the Mandarin, which is kind of weird because he was never meant to be Chinese in that movie to begin with. He was more of an Osama bin Laden imitator, which made a lot more sense given the political climate at the time and Tony's own personal history in Afghanistan. And what's even funnier is that he was actually shaping up to be an interesting modern spin on a classic antagonist. Well, until they fucking ruined him with literal toilet humour. But hey, why let that get in the way of a nice bit of revisionist history? So Ben Kingsley just happens to have a magical bullshit pet animal with no head that only he can communicate with, and it's willing to show them the way to get through the magical bullshit forest so it can return to the magical bullshit fairy tale land that it came from. Wow, it's a real shame that not Fu Manchu never figured this out, considering he was the one who captured it and brought it back here. You'd think he might have devoted some time and resources to studying it scientifically, perhaps learning more about its origins and its true nature, but, well, apparently not. Also, how exactly is this fucking idiot able to understand its language when he has no connection to the magical bullshit fairy tale land and doesn't even speak Chinese, which might be the only human language even vaguely related to it? Don't know, move on. So Shang, strong female character number 2, and Not Funny Katie escape from Not Fu Manchu's heavily guarded fortress in a car with almost no effort, make it through the magical bullshit forest, and arrive in magical bullshit fairy tale land. That's where they run into strong female character number 3, who explains that she and her friends are there to guard a portal to, another dimension where an evil monster got sealed away thousands of years ago. Jesus, how many fucking portals do we need in this movie? Anyway, every so often, humans from our world come through the magical bullshit forest to invade the place, and strong female character number 3 and her buddies have to fight them off. Which kind of begs the question, why not just seal the portal off, shut it down, or disable it? Why keep it open if you don't want to have anyone coming through it? At the very least, why isn't the portal constantly guarded with your best warriors and heaviest firepower? Why are you still using medieval weapons when you claim to be part of a super advanced civilization that's light years ahead of anything in our entire universe? Why does your very existence seem to contradict everything you're telling us about yourself? Fuck off, film. I've seen kids' cartoons with more internal logic than this. So naturally, Not Fu Manchu eventually rolls in with his troops, who for some reason are armed with ridiculously shitty, non-lethal energy weapons that only seem able to fire one shot. Because clearly if they had automatic infantry weapons, then the entire battle would be over as quickly as they could empty their magazines. So anyway, there's a big old battle, which is like two medieval armies fighting each other, and Not Fu Manchu opens the gateway to release the monster, and there's a whole bunch of other monsters flying around, and the 10 Rings join forces with the magical bullshit fairy tale people to fight them off. Then a dragon shows up for some reason, and strong female characters 2 and 3 do their strong female character thing, and Not Funny Katie nearly kills the world-ending final boss with a single arrow, because that's apparently a thing you can do, and eventually Shang-Chi himself does a magic CGI thing with the 10 Rings to kill the final boss and save the day. And then everyone goes home and lives happily ever after. And that's it, that's the plot for Shang-Chi and the Lord of the 10 Fern Gully Rings. You know, it's kind of hard to know where to start with my criticism for this film, because as you've probably guessed from my plot synopsis, there's quite a lot of things wrong from a writing point of view. Basically, the story for this film is a series of contrived situations and character choices that either didn't need to happen in the first place or contradict each other when they do. Not Fu Manchu's decision to enlist his kids makes no sense when you realise they both ran away from him previously. Strong female character number 2's decision to announce Shang-Chi's arrival makes no sense given her desire to stay hidden. Strong female character number 3's decision to leave the portal open goes completely against her mission to guard the magical bullshit fairy tale land from foreign invaders. Even Not Funny Katie's decision to go with Shang-Chi into a dangerous situation she absolutely isn't equipped to deal with comes across as kind of selfish and immature, placing an unnecessary burden of protection on a man who's already way in over his heads. On the subject of Not Funny Katie, I have to say that she's without doubt the worst aspect of this movie. She's dumb, obnoxious, arrogant, and more insufferable than a Captain Marvel fan convention. I mean, I get that wisecracking sidekicks have always been a thing in movies like this, and in theory she might have been an endearing character if she wasn't written by talentless morons and portrayed by Aquafina. Seriously, every single time she opens her mouth, it's like my ears are being raped by a dildo made out of sandpaper and chili sauce. She and Shang have absolutely nothing approaching chemistry together, and it's really odd because I don't think they even have a single romantic moment. If you told me that she was gay and he was stranded deep in the friend zone with no hope hope of rescue, I would absolutely believe you on this one. The inclusion of strong female character number 2 also feels like a weird choice, diluting and muddying what should have been a pretty streamlined narrative, and a lot of the time it feels like she's doing things that Shang ought to be doing for himself. And I can't shake the feeling that she was included for no other reason than because, well, it's the MCU, and even in a movie with a theoretical male lead, there always has to be an equally important, equally powerful, equally smart female to balance him out. Funny how that particular door never swings the other way though, eh? Funny how male supporting characters in female-led movies are almost always portrayed as useless, incompetent, ineffective morons that are just there to be mocked and belittled. Funny how that's considered totally acceptable in today's entertainment landscape. Anyway, I digress. All of this brings me to the weakest aspect of the movie, which is Shang-Chi himself. Simply put, this guy is a bit of a black hole of a character, with barely an ounce of charisma, screen presence, strength or competence to his name. Most of the time he looks and acts like he can't quite believe he's the main character of a story, which is pretty understandable because the script seems to do everything in its power to minimise him at the expense of everyone else. I also totally don't understand how he can go from a goofy, incompetent everyman who sings karaoke with Not Funny Katie to a kick-ass martial arts fighter with absolutely nothing in between. This guy was trained to be an assassin from 6 years old. He's had every ounce of compassion and mercy hammered out of him. He's basically a Chinese Black Widow, a living weapon who could kill you as easily as look at you, but he acts like the kind of guy who uses safety scissors to open a packet of crisps. I wanted to see him struggling with his violent past, the conflict between the light and dark sides of his personality, but it's like the writer specifically set out to avoid anything that would make him remotely interesting. The result is a wildly conflicted character that changes from one scene to the next, and I couldn't empathise with him because I never had a sense of who and what he was, never mind what he actually wants out of life. This kind of inconsistency, combined with a lack of narrative focus, is what ultimately sinks him as a character. Cast your minds back to Tony Stark from Iron Man. The first 5 minutes of that movie clearly established what kind of guy Tony was, how he saw the world, what his strengths and weaknesses were, and even the irony of his own weapons being used against him. Straight away, you knew who this guy was, what he was about, and you instinctively rooted for him. I never knew who Shang-Chi was or why I should care about him because the writers don't seem to know either. And the thing that makes all of this so frustrating is that deep down, I think there's a good story here. The scenes between Shang-Chi and his father are excellent. The gradual revelation of their shared history makes for strong character building, and I think if the film had ditched some of the forced humour and annoying side characters, and just delivered a more streamlined narrative centred on these two, it would have made for a fucking great story. A film that could have explored interesting ideas about family legacy and breaking free of the past. But it lacks the maturity, the creativity, and the storytelling skill to do anything with these promising elements. On a technical level, some of the fight scenes are genuinely great, despite the obvious lack of blood. Simu Liu clearly knows what he's doing as a fighter, and it shines through when he's allowed to properly let loose. Especially the fight with Death Dealer. Damn, why couldn't this guy have had a bigger role? Although you can really tell when he's up against an older or a less experienced actor, because the pace drops considerably and the number of mistake-hiding jump cuts increases exponentially. Fuck knows what the CGI people were up to though, because a lot of the scenes later in the film look fake as fuck. Nothing takes you out of an experience quicker than seeing a character up against a very obvious green screen, and it seems kind of unforgivable in a big budget movie like this. The unfinished CGI, combined with the unpolished script and the fragmented story, just makes this movie feel rushed and incomplete, like they didn't really have enough time and resources to get it nailed down properly. Ultimately, Shang-Chi is the kind of movie that tries to be all things to all men, and as a result it ends up pulling itself in a dozen different directions, unable to focus on what's actually important, and in the end, instead of an epic step into an exciting new world, it becomes just another lightweight, expensive piece of Marvel fluff that you're not expected to think about a second longer than it's on screen. And for me, the most frustrating thing of all is that it's a wasted opportunity. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.